This morning, our call to community is lifting our voices from Elizabeth Tarbox, adapted. And so I say, ours is a story of faith, hope, and love. I say that our need for one another that binds us together, that brings us laughing and limping into relationships, and keeps us at it when we might otherwise despair of the fix we're in. I say it is the holy that we need, the eternal beyond our comprehension. And one place we can find it is here, working and worshiping together. And I say there is a transcendent value worthy of our loyalty upon which we may set our hearts, and divine manifestation is love. As is our custom, if you'd like to come and light a candle for any reason, or simply to bring more light into the world, please do so while we sit in stillness, listening to the prelude. Please stand and body your spirit for our chalice lighting and spoken affirmation. May this flame we light remind us that every one of us can bring a light to this world. May this clear flame be a symbol that every heart can burn bright with joy, peace, and harmony. May the wisdom of the ages speak to us through this flame and stay in us. Every one of us can be a blessing to the world. Join me as together we remind ourselves of the affirmation that is a cornerstone of this church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. You may be seated.
Today is our 7th Sunday, continuing our look at great peacemakers, true stories from around the world. Our 2 peacemakers today include Henry Salt, whose writings influenced many individuals, including Mahatma Gandhi, and Albert Schweitzer, a great physician and teacher. They are 2 leaders who advocated for valuing all life instead of just human life. You will hear many echoes of our 7th principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Much of the dialogue about the leaders is taken directly from the book. Believed to be the first person to advocate of movement for animal rights, English scholar Henry Salt redefined humanitarian to mean one who has compassion for both humans and animals, bringing into common usage the term blood sport. He and his organization helped to end a 700-year-old royal tradition of hunting tame deer. Through these and other accomplishments, Salt sought to cultivate a more humane society and live out his personal credo, the creed of kinship. To a family tracing its heritage to King Frederick I of Denmark, Henry Stephen Salt was born in 1851 in Nainital, India, where he was a year old, or when he was a year old, his parents separated. His father, a colonel in the Royal Bengal Artillery, stayed in India, while Salt and his mother moved to Shropshire, England. There, Salt enjoyed a generally privileged and carefree childhood. As he entered his adolescent years, his intelligence shined, and he was soon being groomed for entrance into prestigious Eton College. When asked by his tutor whether it was wrong to doubt, Salt answered that it was not. Little did he know that he would spend most of his adult life doing just that, doubting societal norms. Admitted to Eton at the age 15 as a King's Scholar, Salt, a gregarious teen, had a knack for making friends and reveled in the camaraderie of the boarding school life. It was not until he entered Cambridge University that Salt began to ponder larger issues, such as the importance of ethics in society. After earning an honors degree from Cambridge, Salt was invited back to Eton as an assistant master, but was disappointed to discover that new ideas were practically banned there. Salt met and married Catherine, known as Kate, Leah Joines, the daughter of a fellow Eton master. Upon reading Howard Williams' book, The Ethics of Diet, Salt became a vegetarian, even though he admitted a vegetarian, quote, was of course regarded as a sheer lunatic in the Eton of those days, unquote. After making his dietary change, Salt began rethinking other cultural norms as well. Eventually, feeling out of sync with his Eton colleagues, he resigned from Eton at the age of 33. Inspired partially by the ideas of American writer Henry David Thoreau, the Salts simplified their life, dispersed with their servants, and moved to a worker's cottage in Surrey. With lower living expenses, they were free to focus on what really mattered to them: gardening, writing, hosting friends, and promoting humane causes. Symbols of Salt's former life were transformed into such more practical items as his master's gown was cut into strips to support vines, while his top hat shaded young vegetables in the garden. Similarly, Salt too was transformed from wealthy, high-standing Eton master to humble, controversial scholar. As Salt took the time to reflect, he noticed that in his society, which claimed to be highly civilized, two types of savagery were prevalent: violence towards animals and violence towards humans. He came to the realization that, quote, by condoning cruelty to animals, we perpetuate the very spirit which condones cruelty to men, unquote. To raise awareness of this connection, Salt began writing the had nearly 40 books that he would produce in his lifetime. His first book was a plea for vegetarianism. It eventually found its way to Mahatma Gandhi, deeply reinforcing the Indian leader's decision to be vegetarian. Among his other books, Salt's Animal Rights, considered in relation to social progress, is regarded as the best of the 18th and 19th century books on the topic. In this book, Salt explained his belief that humans and animals, as sentient beings able to experience sensation or feeling, should be allowed to live free of avoidable suffering. Further, Salt related the treatment of animals to the structure of society. He observed that in a frantic, competitive society in which profit is the main goal, the well-being of both humans and animals is usually sacrificed for that goal. Although some laws might forbid the worst forms of abuse, most people in such a society, Salt believed, quote, simply cannot and will not afford to treat animals as they ought to be treated, unquote. Still hopeful, Salt co-founded the Humanitarian League and redefined humanitarian to mean, quote, one who feels and acts humanely, not towards mankind only or the lower animals only, but towards all sentient life. In the League, Salt created campaigns to address an array of inhumane practices, including war, corporal punishment, the death penalty, the slaughter of animals for food, and the abuse of animals in cruel sports. Frequently referring to activities such as sport hunting as blood sports, the League brought this term into common usage. In addition, the League supported humane education to teach youth the importance of being thoughtful towards humans and animals. The root of all cruelty to such animals, Salt believed, was the notion that humans are superior to the rest of creation. He hoped that this superiority complex might be alleviated as science discovered biological similarities between humans and animals. Salt indicated this hope in a short poem that he penned. The poem: the motive that you'll find most strong, the simple rule, the short and long, for doing animals no wrong, is this, that you are one. Salt also exercised his wit through reductio ad nausem, the act of pretending to defend the very thing that one opposes. When the League published The Brutalitarian, the Journal of the Sane and Strong, and The Beagler Boy, which regarding Eaton's tradition of hunting rabbits with dogs, some unknown reviewers actually praised these journals, much to Salt's amusement. The League's most successful campaign addressed the royal buckhounds, a royal tradition of hunting tame deer. Salt and his friends petitioned Queen Victoria and collected statements from prominent citizens against the hunt. Though the Queen did not act, the League knew from a letter that she opposed the hunt, and after her death, this information was made public, settling the matter and ending a 700-year-old royal tradition. Like Henry David Thoreau, whose biography he wrote, Salt too defended nature and opposed war. Seeking to protect the pastoral English countryside, Salt noted that when someone objects to a project that harms nature, people always justify the project by stressing it provides jobs. Salt countered that just because a project provides jobs does not necessarily mean that it is truly beneficial to society. After all, the same reasoning could be used to justify tearing down an important landmark, such as Westminster Abbey, to provide jobs. Similarly, Salt encouraged people to reconsider justifications for war, pointing out that the saying, quote, "If you hope for peace, prepare for war," unquote, was one of the most ridiculous concepts ever conceived. He said, quote, "Evil cannot be suppressed by evil, nor one kind of militarism extinguished by another kind of militarism. As long as man kills the lower races for food or sport, he will be ready to kill his own race for enmity. It is not this bloodshed or that bloodshed that must cease, but all needless bloodshed," unquote, illuminating a link between war and animal abuse. After World War I, Salt suffered two painful emotional blows. The Humanitarian League was forced to disband because resources were scarce after the war. And Kate, Salt's companion for 40 years, passed away. Salt mourned her death for nearly a decade. His grief was somewhat eased by writing his autobiography with the tongue-in-cheek title, 70 Years Among Savages, a good-natured critique of his own country's uncivilized ways. Getting older, Salt hired a housekeeper, Catherine Mandeville, who was highly caring and loyal. In time, Salt and Catherine married, and by all accounts enjoyed a very happy marriage. Salt received another boost when Mahatma Gandhi visited England, asked to see Salt, and opening a meeting of the London Vegetarian Society by praising him. In his last book, The Creed of Kinship, Salt summarized his credo, quote, "A belief that in years yet to come, there will be a recognition of the brotherhood between man and man, nation and nation, human and subhuman, which will transform a state of semi-savagery as we have it into one of civilization, when there will be no such barbarity as warfare or the robbery of the poor by the rich or the ill usage of the lower animals by mankind," unquote. Salt's bright mind and good humor stayed with him into old age, and he joked that he was taking so long to die, he was afraid the police would arrest him for loitering. Of course, he was not arrested, and in 1939, 88-year-old Salt passed away in Brighton, Sussex. During his burial service, a friend read the message that Salt had written in advance for this occasion. In it, Salt declared, quote, "I shall die as I have lived, rationalist, socialist, pacifist, and humanitarian." After reaffirming his belief in the creed of kinship, Salt concluded, "In this farewell, I would say a word of deep gratitude for the wonderful kindness that I have met with throughout life, whether from the comparatively few who have been in close agreement with my thoughts, or some of the many who have dissented from them," unquote. So drew to the close the life of Henry Salt, who has been called one of the least known but most outstanding champions of animals' rights, relinquishing a life of status for one of substance and advocating his creed of kinship with conviction, respect, and humor. This grandfather of animal rights movement was not only a gentleman, but also a truly gentle man. I could not find any videos about Henry Salt, so instead we'll continue with seeing a few of his famous quotes, and it'll be followed by hymn number 175 in the gray hymnal.
The words for our meditation this morning are from Chaim Stern. Please settle in your seats and take 3 deep breaths to prepare you for the meditation. For the times when I could have made peace with my neighbor who picked a quarrel, forgive me. And forgive me too for the time when I could have accepted with grace an offering of friendship and reconciliation, but did not choose to listen. In times, in my willfulness, I may have closed my heart to the possibility of a healing word. Today and tomorrow, let my heart be open. Please join me in a minute of silence to contemplate these words and to let our hearts be open.
World-renowned physician, Nobel laureate, organist, theologian, philosopher, and humanitarian, Dr. Albert Schweitzer was a modern-day Renaissance man. Most famous for his medical service in the African jungle, Schweitzer felt that his greatest contribution in the world was the ethic of reverence for life, saying, quote, "I wanted to make my argument, or my life, my argument," unquote. Schweitzer lived this ethic, encouraging it on a global level as the basis of world peace. Albert Schweitzer was born in 1875 in Gunsbach-Alzey, then Germany, now France, to a Protestant minister and his wife. A serious child, Schweitzer thought deeply about the world around him. Early on, he wondered why he was taught to pray only for people and not for all creatures. So he created his own secret prayer, asking that all living things be blessed and sleep in peace. When Schweitzer was 8, he and a classmate convinced him to shoot birds with slingshots. As the boys crouched down and he took aim at the flock of birds, the church bells rang out. Schweitzer recalled, quote, "Their music drove deep into my heart. the commandment, thou shalt not kill, unquote. Conquering his fear of losing the boy's friendship, Schweitzer jumped up and shooed the birds away before his friend could shoot them. Throughout the rest of Schweitzer's life, this concern for all creatures would grow into a grand flame, illuminating countless lives. As a young man, the reflective Schweitzer felt drawn to a life of service. At age 21, he made the conscious choice to devote himself to music, scholarship, and ministry until the age 30, and then to decide how to serve humanity directly. Earning 2 doctoral degrees in philosophy and theology, he became a university professor, seminary principal, and author of 3 books. Suddenly, in his 29th year, Schweitzer discovered his life's work. Reading an article about the need for medical help in French Equatorial Africa, he saw an opportunity to atone for the harm that the white race had done to the black race. Boldly resigning his positions, he announced that he would study medicine and serve in Africa. Everyone frowned at this idea. How could he abandon his successful career and submerge his talents in the jungle? No one understood his decision except Helene Breslau, a nurse of Jewish descent who later became his wife, co-worker, and mother of their daughter, Rena. For 8 years, Schweitzer pursued his medical studies, pay for them by giving lectures and organ recitals. Surviving on little sleep, he continued his work in philosophy, theology, and music, and published several more books, all while attending medical school. Once qualified as a physician, he applied through a missionary society to go to Africa. Shockingly, he was rejected. The society believed that Schweitzer was too free-thinking and that he would disrupt their initiatives. Undaunted, the doctor personally raised the funds for his mission, and the society finally accepted him under one condition: that he promises not to spread his heretical ideas to the other missionaries and their converts. Leaving their familiar lives behind, the Schweitzers sailed to the village of Lambrana in French Equatorial Africa, now Gabon, and set a practice in an old chicken coop. From these humble beginnings, Schweitzer spent most of the next 52 years developing a modern hospital that encompassed over 75 buildings and treated as many as 700 patients a day. Today, the Albert Schweitzer Hospital conducts approximately 40,000 patient examinations and performs 5,000 operations annually. It has been called the most famous hospital in the world. Dr. Schweitzer and his wife accomplished this remarkable feat despite twice being held as prisoners of war, financial scarcity, deep depression, and long periods of separation when Mrs. Schweitzer had to stay in Europe because of illness and to raise their daughter. During World War I, the concerned Schweitzer worried about the future of civilization and desperately sought an answer to the world's problems. Try as he might, though he could not find an answer in any religion or philosophy. Quote, "I was pushing against an iron door that would not yield," unquote. Then, during a river journey in Gabon, he recalled, quote, "At sunset, we were making our way through a herd of hippopotamuses. There flashed upon my mind, unforeseen and unsought, the phrase, reverence for life. The iron door had finally yielded," unquote. Schweitzer explained, quote, "The fundamental fact of human awareness is this: I am life that wants to live in the midst of other life that wants to live. A thinking man feels compelled to approach all life with the same reverence he has for his own. Thus, all life becomes part of his own experience. From such a point of view, good means to maintain life, to further life, to bring developing life to its highest value. Evil means to destroy life, to hurt life, to keep life from developing. If a man has been touched by the ethic of reverence for life, he injures and destroys life only under a necessity he cannot avoid, and never from thoughtlessness. Everything that lives has value simply as a living thing, as one of the manifestations of the mystery that is life." Schweitzer believed a person living the principle of reverence for life would, for example, lift a worm that was stuck on the hot, dry pavement and gently return it to the cool, damp soil, or extend a twig to a moth struggling on the surface of a pond so that it could climb aboard and save itself. Through compassionate actions, he believed that a person would develop a deeper and more harmonious relationship with the world and its wonders. A person living in this conscious manner would meet some inconvenience, but would ultimately enjoy a more profound sense of meaning and substance in life. As Schweitzer said, quote, "I myself found the basis and the direction for my life at the moment I discovered the principle of reverence for life, which contains life's ethical affirmation." In contrast, Schweitzer felt that violent acts such as war manifest disregard for life. Reflecting on World War I, he stated, quote, "No one won. The war killed millions of men and brought suffering and death to millions of innocent animals. Why? Because we did not possess the highest rationality of reverence for life. Until he extends the circle of his compassion to all living things, man will not find himself find peace." When the first atom bomb was dropped on Japan in World War II, a shocked Schweitzer feared that humanity had created the antithesis of reverence for life. He echoed the sentiments of Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, quote, "He who would rejoice in victory would be rejoicing in murder," unquote. Receiving the 1952 Nobel Peace Prize, Schweitzer suggested that peace could only be achieved when prejudice and nationalism were abandoned and the universality of life was embraced. Encouraged by his friend, Dr. Albert Einstein, Schweitzer spoke out against nuclear weapons in 4 radio addresses broadcast in multiple languages worldwide. He asserted, quote, "Only those who have never been present at the birth of a deformed baby, never witnessed the despair of its mother, dare to maintain that the risk in going on with nuclear tests is one which must be taken under existing circumstances. Due to the tremendous advances in technology, the capacity to destroy life has become the fate of mankind. We can save ourselves from this fate only by abolition of atomic weapons." Although initially the U.S. government considered Schweitzer an adversary to its policies, when President John F. Kennedy signed the 1963 Nuclear Test Ban Treaty with the Soviet Union, the White House issued a press release citing a letter from Schweitzer to Kennedy congratulating him for taking this historic step toward world peace. Just as Schweitzer's anti-nuclear activism reflected his reverence for life, so did his efforts to make his hospital grounds a haven for people, plants, and animals. Keenly aware that to save human lives, he sometimes had to end others, be they poisonous snakes, disease-carrying mosquitoes, or infection-causing microorganisms. Schweitzer acknowledged the value of these lives, and when ending them to treat his patients, he strove to compensate by caring for other animals that he could help. For example, he publicly endorsed a U.S. Senate bill that reduced laboratory animal suffering. He promoted better living conditions for farm animals, and he became a vegetarian. Worried about the lack of further progress towards the abolition of nuclear weapons, the aging Schweitzer considered making additional radio appeals to society. Sadly, however, his health did not permit this to happen. In 1965, after taking one last look at his life's work, his hospital in Lambrena, Schweitzer quietly passed away and was laid to rest in a simple pine coffin on the grounds of the hospital. For months after his passing, Africans from throughout Gabon traveled long distances to pay homage to their beloved doctor. Their gratitude, shared by countless admirers around the world, whose lives were illuminated by this extraordinary man. Fortunately, Dr. Albert Schweitzer's passing did not extinguish his brilliant flame. It shines on, igniting the spark of compassion in all who strive to live their highest ideals, to be of service to the world, and to open their hearts and minds to the ethic of reverence. We will now see an excerpt from a movie about Albert Schweitzer, followed by a few more famous quotes, and then the Song in the Gray hymnal, number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
After extensive studies of the scriptures and the historical materials, I have concluded that Jesus did not understand himself to be the Messiah. That he was mistaken when he predicted the end of the world during his own lifetime, and that many of the accounts of the Last Supper were creations of the early church writers.
The divinity of Jesus, the nature of the resurrection, the nature of the crucifixion and the value of the crucifixion. All of these were brought up by Schweitzer for question, and many people were upset.
But I understood you. You were drawn to the Jesus who fed the hungry and healed the sick.
It struck me as inconceivable that I should be able to lead such a happy life, while so many people around me struggled with sorrow and suffering. I want to free myself from this bourgeois life that would kill all the humanity in me. I am suffocating. I must free myself.
Then one day you found out about the way Europeans treated Africans in the colonies.
If only half of the cruelties reported were actually committed there, no responsible person could remain a calm observer. I've got to do something.
It was then I knew our paths would unite. But there was one obstacle in the way, the Paris Mission Society.
The Paris Missionary Society controlled who went to Africa and to other mission fields and who did not.
They had read what you had written about the historical Jesus, and they did not like it one bit.
Dr. Schweitzer, do you even consider yourself Christian?
If you mean, do I believe all the dogma and doctrines of the church, the answer is no. But am I trying to live my life according to Jesus, to help those most in need? The answer is certainly yes.
While we admire your willingness to serve, we have read your theology, and quite frankly, we find it disturbing. You must understand, the work of this society is to heal not only the body of the African, but the soul as well. Placing you in their midst could jeopardize years of work.
I have a doctorate in philosophy, a teaching degree in theology. I am a pastor and musician. I have studied and written extensively on Bach. But I must tell you, all these things I have experienced have failed to quench my thirst. And that is why I returned to study medicine, so as a doctor I can be of comfort to those who suffer. For I have come to believe the sole truth and happiness consists in serving God wherever He needs us, and I believe where I am needed most is Africa.
He went one by one to the members of this Paris Missionary Society. He spoke with them in some impassioned and personal way and helped to convince them that he wasn't such a bad guy after all. And then he promised that he would go and do his medical work, and he himself would remain as silent as a fish.
I saw important people become like children in the presence of my father.
Oh, you could be very persuasive.
Dr. Schweitzer, after deliberation, we have decided, reluctantly, that we will allow you to go to Africa, on one condition, that you promise only to practice medicine. You are not to preach or teach your radical notions to the Africans in any way.
I agree.
After that meeting, you wrote me,
But what will be my fate? I go there to be with Jesus. He may do with me what He will, and I will find out what those words mean that Jesus said, "Who loses his life for me and for my word, he will keep it."
John Morgan brings us these words for our offering. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we've given, but rather how well we live. It won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. Please give generously. The bowl awaits, or you may donate online. I invite you to stand in body or spirit for the benediction and extinguishing the chalice. Sarah York reminds us, we receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire in our heart. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace to be peace.